Welcome to Influencers, where we bring you the people that impact our city, our state, and our community. Today, we're honored to have our sheriff, Joe Lombardo. Joe, thanks for being here.
Oh, absolutely.
Appreciate it very much. I want to start with some personal stuff. Before we do that, where would you rather be if you could be anywhere else right now?
Anywhere else? Right here. Latin Chamber of Commerce.
I like that. Did you work on that answer?
No. I'm reading the sign behind you. No, I'm being facetious. No, I really totally appreciate you inviting me here, because I know the influence you have in the Hispanic and Latin community, and I think it's very important for us to talk about what's going on. And the Latin Chamber of Commerce has been very beneficial to both the Hispanic Latin community and myself as the sheriff. So
I appreciate that.
Really, thank you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. I'd like people to get to be able to know a little bit more about who you are and how did you get to Nevada?
Well, I'm 55. I know we had this little discourse before we started, but I guess I'm older than you.
You're older than me.
Okay.
We'll just leave it at that.
We'll go with that. All right. 55 years old. I'm still in my first term as the elected sheriff. But if we back up, how did I get to Las Vegas? My dad was in the military, the Air Force. And via Madrid, Spain, he came out to Nellis Air Force Base and eventually retired from there. And that's how I ended up here.
So were you born in Madrid?
No, I was born in Misawa, Japan.
Oh, wow.
So me being a military kid, we moved around every few years. So by proxy, I was born in Japan. I lived in Italy, Germany, Walla Walla, Washington, Barksdale, Louisiana, Panama City, Florida.
Wow.
A little bit everywhere. But I call Las Vegas home. I've been here since 1976. Went to Rancho High School. So I know Las Vegas very well. I'm very proud of my roots at Rancho in the Las Vegas community. I left for a short period of time after finishing high school to the United States Army for a little bit. And then I came back, went to UNLV, and worked around town while I was at UNLV. Eventually got my bachelor's and master's. I got my master's after I got hired on the police department, bachelor's prior to, and then that's all she wrote. Yeah. Joined the police department in 1988.
1988. And speaking of that, who has had the greatest influence on you personally and in your career in law enforcement?
You know, that's a difficult question because there's been a lot of key individuals in my life and in my career. You know, more importantly would be my life is my father, who sadly passed away last year. He had a bout of cancer, but I would say he would be the biggest influence on me. You know, it was very difficult growing up in a military family, and you know, he created that stability when we went from town to town to town.
Yeah.
And that's tough as a kid. You know, meeting new people every 3 years, 4 years. But then when I got on the police department, it's no secret, Bill Young, the former sheriff, and Doug Gillespie, they were both good friends of mine. And, you know, and as you move forward in my career, I ended up following their footsteps within the sheriff's position. So the most influential people I'm comfortable with saying is Bill Young and Doug Gillespie.
Well, you picked two fine gentlemen right there, I'll tell you that. I go back over 20 years with Bill Young and know Doug very well, but two guys that really cared about this community. So
absolutely.
Those are good influencers.
You know, and Bill, he was basically homegrown here, but Doug was a transplant. You know, he came from New York, and you know, and you would figure the short time he was here, well, actually it'd be a long time, 30 plus years. He decided to stay here in the Las Vegas Valley. That's how important it is here.
And tell us what you love about Las Vegas the most.
You know, I've asked that question quite often, and you know, it's difficult in some aspects, Las Vegas, because it's a 24-hour town. And, you know, it's really hard to get to know your neighbors. It's not that traditional feel sometimes in your neighborhoods and stuff. But I think the diversity is probably the thing I like the most here. It's different than anywhere else in the world, and the different types of cultures and the people and everything else associated with it that goes along with different cultures. I think that's what I appreciate the most.
It forms a beautiful community, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the whole melting pot with New York City, I think this is actually the melting pot. So.
That's great. More with Sheriff Joe Lombardo in a moment. Hello, welcome back to Influencers. Here again with Sheriff Joe Lombardo. About being a police officer, tell us about the early years and when and how did you become a police officer?
You know, that's a weird story. You know, a lot of times you hear when you ask that question of any police officer in general, they say, well, I've always wanted to be one. And that wasn't my case. I formerly was trained as a civil engineer at UNLV. I worked in that career for a short period of time, decided, you know, I'm a little bit of an adrenaline junkie. And I had a couple friends that were already on the police department that I worked out in the gym with and everything. And when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, it wasn't engineering. It was, you know, it was too boring to me. So I did a couple ride-alongs on the police department.
The ride-along.
And I was hooked from that point forward. It was we had an exciting night the couple times that I did it, and that's what I thought I wanted to do the rest of my life. And
when did you start saying, I want to be sheriff? That's a big jump.
Yeah, that's a big jump, and to be frank with you, it was never on my radar. When I had in the early, as a young police officer, you think about, well, maybe I'd like to be a lieutenant, you know, and then as you get further in your career, maybe I'd like to be a captain. And then for most of my career, I thought deputy chief would be the pinnacle for me. And then Doug Gillespie, who promoted me to deputy chief, he came to me one day and said, hey, you ready to get promoted? And I said, assistant sheriff? And he goes, oh yeah, it's time for you to move up. And I was a little nervous about that, but I assimilated it. I appreciated the job. It was a challenge, and I believe I did a good job because I was planning on staying in that position. And then Doug Gillespie was going to run for a third term. And I told him, he asked me how long I was going to be around. And I said, I'm going to be with you through your third term, and then I'm going to retire. Well, in the middle of his campaign, he decided he wasn't going to run again.
Yeah.
And he approached me, asked me one-on-one, told me he wasn't going to run, and he asked me to consider it. I took a long time.
Yeah.
And if you look back, you know, it would be 4 years now. If you look back, there was a lot of controversy out there in the media whether I was going to run or not. And I just wanted to make sure I had that support mechanism in place because it's a big step. It's a big position. It's a lot of public trust, you know, with the position, and I had to make sure I had the shoulders for it. So I made the decision, and I was fortunate enough to get elected.
Has your first term been everything you expected?
I would say the majority has. There's a lot more spotlight than I had expected. You know, I'm a little bit introverted in my personality. I had to come out of that shell as the sheriff because, you know, you're a public persona, and the traditional police work is not part of what I do anymore. What I do now is mend fences and create partnerships and shake hands and be the face of the community in public safety.
And do you think you've gotten the support?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think across the board, you know, I had a lot of support in the beginning across the board. Where I didn't have it was internally on the police department. There was another individual that ran against me that was, I believe, more liked internally. I think I had the better resume, and but internally, I think I have full support now. You know, the proof's in the pudding.
That's right.
You know, and so I think the community has always supported me, and I don't think that's wavered.
Excellent.
So
we'll be back with our last segment of Influencers with Sheriff Joe Lombardo in a moment. Thank you. Hello, welcome back to Influencers, our last segment with Sheriff Joe Lombardo. Joe, how does the fact that we have over 45 million people coming here every year, how does that go into your budget, your planning, and your whole mental, you know, thought process?
Well, it doesn't go into my budget, but it does go into my mental and thought process and how we operate. So when you think about funding a police department, it's easy for the government officials to think of number of police officers per 1,000 permanent residents. And what we attempt to achieve is 2 police officers per 1,000. So that 42 to 45 million visitors isn't in the formula, and that's the frustrating piece for me. For us to be properly funded and properly staffed, that number needs to be a lot more than 2 officers per 1,000 because of that outlier number. And so I have to, that's my job as the sheriff. It's my job to convince them they err their ways, for lack of a better way to say it, but for us to be able to be properly staffed and what we do on a daily basis. So if you use just the tourism corridor, you know, the strip corridor in the Fremont Street area, 8% of my total work involves tourism.
Wow.
So that's a big number. When you're looking at 3.5 million calls a year, 8% is a big number. So it's frustrating in that aspect, but we seem to be doing a pretty good job.
Yeah.
But we could do a better job.
Of course. So amongst those, 42, 45 million people, the 1 October shooting, how did that affect you personally?
You know, it was tough on me per se because, since 9/11 and all the units that stood up in the counterterrorism world and the homeland security world, and we spitball different scenarios and what if, and we've done such a great job of mitigating all those factors associated with that. And then this individual that come up with this scenario that we didn't what if and caused the harm that he did is very tough on me, especially under my watch. And it's not that complicated what he did, and it's frustrating for that to take place. So it affected me hard in that aspect. Could I have prevented it? Did we miss something associated with it? And everybody I talk to says no, but it still happens under your watch. So it's tough.
Yeah, it happened maybe under your watch, but you can't beat yourself up on it. You still have a job to do each and every day, and you guys do it tremendously well, keeping us safe when we're sleeping. And so I think you've done an amazing job.
Well, thank you.
How did it affect your organization? Like, did you openly hear people talking about it, or did they just move on?
It's difficult to move on, even though we try to move on, because as you can imagine, in a population of 2+ million people, we still have crime occurring every day. Outside, it's not like you can just, okay, we had 1 October happen, we're going to do the investigation with that, and nothing else is going on. No, we're still 24/7 dealing with everything else on top of it. So it's frustrating for our folks because we don't have that ability to reset and think about it and figure out, how we can adjust how we do things. We have to do it on a regular, continual basis.
And these are folks that have kids in this community, and I know you have a kid, and like my kid went to that concert every year. So this year just happened not to go because she's off in college in Utah, right, and didn't want to come home for that. So it hit really home for a lot of us, right?
Yeah, it's amazing to me, even on my daily travels, there's 6 degrees of separation every day associated. My cousin's brother or sister was at the concert. Talking to somebody, my daughter was at the concert. At that point, they estimate there was right around 22,000 people that evening. So it touches everywhere. And then if you look at the people that got injured and the ultimate sacrifice lost their life, they're from all over the world.
They really are.
And so it touched everybody in the whole world, not just in the Las Vegas Valley.
I certainly think that you and Commissioner Chairman Sisolak, responded as quickly as you can, and I know that the fund got started, for which now I'm on the Victims Fund board, which is hard work.
No good deed goes unpunished, huh? Yeah, it's hard work. It's hard work.
It's hard work.
Can't make everybody happy. That's frustrating.
Yeah, but I'm glad that you guys thought that, and out of that something was created, and I thought it was, like you said, a good deed. So
yeah, just to make a little short comment on that, it ended up 100 times bigger than we thought it was going to be.
That's true.
We stood it up just to for the right thing to do, and it grew some legs and
took a life of its own.
Took a life of its own, and I got to commend you, Pete, for stepping to the plate and volunteering to be part of that committee. I mean, that's a tough job, and thank you.
Well, I appreciate it. It's the least I could do. I love this community. I love this state. Been here for over 47 years, so for me it was a no-brainer, and no matter how tough it is, it's what we do, right?
Right.
We love our community.
Right.
Can we get stronger because of this tragedy?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you fail if you don't learn from events that take place. Any tragedy, any good thing, any bad thing, you have to learn from it, and we're definitely learning from it. And the Vegas Strong campaign is robust, and thanks to the LVCVA for pushing that forward. I think it was very important for us to rebound with that campaign, Vegas Strong, and I think it's helped us in our resiliency. I think we're a stronger community, honestly. And I've said it publicly, you know, sometimes I worried about whether we were a true community, and then after that event, it's evident.
Came together.
Yep.
Anything in closing you want to let the folks know?
No, you know what it is? I'm running again, obviously, so I want to let folks know that, and I'm ready to kick some butt for another 4 years, and I'm very proud of what I've done as the sheriff, but more importantly, I'm very proud of the relationships I've developed, and one of them being the Latin Chamber.
Well,
I want to thank you for that.
I'm proud to be able to say you're my friend, and you're a friend of this chamber, and we're grateful for all the work you do.
All right, thank you, buddy.
I want to thank Sheriff Joe Lombardo for joining me today on Influencers. And even more importantly, I want to thank the men and women of Metropolitan Police. They protect us each and every day, sometimes while we're sleeping, sometimes while we're at the park with our kids. They're out there working to protect us. They are real heroes. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Until next time, stay motivated and stay inspired.